The August heat of Alexandria presses down, thick with the cloying scent of myrrh. You are inside a mausoleum, not yet for the dead, but a prison for the living. Cleopatra the Seventh, last Pharaoh of Egypt, is methodically dressing, her hands steady as she fastens a golden girdle. Sunlight sharp as a blade cuts through a high window. A Roman guard brings a basket of ripe, bursting figs. He sets it down, leaves without a word. His knuckles are white. The silence that follows isn't peace. It's the closing of a contract. The story you've been told, a venomous asp hidden among the fruit, a queen's desperate defiance, is a lie. It leaves two impossible questions hanging. Why would a conqueror, desperate to parade this queen, simply let her slip away? And what does it say about you that, in the deepest part of your mind, you already know every surrender has a price, and every tragedy has a witness who agreed to look away? To understand what is about to happen, you need to picture Alexandria in the year 30 BCE. Forget the sanitized ruins you've seen in photographs. You must imagine a living, breathing metropolis choking on defeat. The city smells of salt, spilled wine, and fear. For weeks, the legions of Octavian, the adopted son of Julius Caesar, have surrounded the capital. Just days ago, on August 1st, Mark Antony, Cleopatra's lover and her partner in a failed war against Octavian, died in her arms after a botched suicide. Now Cleopatra, at 39 years old, is a prisoner in her own city, held within the stone walls of the lavish mausoleum she had built for herself and Antony. She is the last ruler of the Ptolemaic dynasty, a line of pharaohs stretching back 3 centuries. She is a direct descendant of Alexander the Great's general, a brilliant polymath who reportedly spoke 9 languages, and a political strategist who held the Roman Empire at bay for 2 decades. She has ruled Egypt since she was 18, navigating a world of deadly court intrigue and Roman expansionism. She famously allied herself with Julius Caesar, bearing him a son, Caesarion, whom she declared the true heir of Caesar. After Caesar's assassination, she forged an even more powerful alliance with his most trusted general, Mark Antony, with whom she had 3 more children. Together, they dreamed of a new Eastern empire to rival Rome, but that dream has just died. Their combined forces were shattered at the naval battle of Actium a year prior, and now Octavian, the cold, calculating final victor in Rome's bloody civil wars, has come to collect his prize, Cleopatra, her children, and the legendary, unimaginable wealth of Egypt. The game is over, the board is cleared, and there is only one move left to make. The final 10 days of Cleopatra's life were not a passive wait for the end. They were a masterclass in psychological warfare. You are a witness to a series of calculated performances. After Antony's death, Octavian's men reportedly stormed the mausoleum, capturing her before she could set its treasures, and herself, ablaze. She was taken to her palace and placed under heavy guard. Every meal was prepared by Roman cooks and tasted by her servants before she ate. Every visitor was stripped and searched. Every conversation was monitored. Octavian's men weren't there to protect her from assassins. If you had been in the palace, you would have realized with a sickening chill they were there to protect her from herself. Her value was in her living body, a symbol of his total victory to be displayed in his triumphal parade. A few days after her capture, Octavian agreed to meet with her. Imagine the scene: the most powerful woman in the world, now a captive, meeting the man who had destroyed her. Plutarch recounts that she appeared before him in mourning, her hair in disarray, her face swollen from weeping. She reportedly threw herself at his feet, pleading for her children. But this was not the act of a broken woman. This was a strategist probing her opponent's weaknesses. She presented him with a list of all her treasures, a gesture of total surrender. But then, one of her own treasurers, a man named Seleucus, stepped forward and accused her of hiding a portion of her wealth. According to historical accounts, Cleopatra flew into a rage, grabbing the man by the hair and striking him in the face. She reportedly screamed that it was a pittance, saved to be given as gifts to Octavian's wife and sister to win their favor. Look closer. If you were in that room, you'd see the lie. This wasn't an outburst, it was a calculated distraction. It was the perfect portrayal of a hysterical, defeated female, designed to make the cold, logical Octavian underestimate her. To see her as emotional and irrational, not as the lethal political player she truly was. He left the meeting convinced he had her under control, that she was clinging to life. He even allowed her to visit Antony's tomb to pay her respects, a seemingly merciful gesture. It was his first mistake. The pressure was building, but not just on her. Octavian was also on a deadline. He needed to pacify Egypt, install a new government, and get back to Rome to celebrate his triumph before his political rivals could consolidate power against him. He needed a clean, swift conclusion. Cleopatra knew this. She knew his timetable. She knew his anxieties. She began sending him a series of letters, messages delivered by her most trusted servants who were allowed to pass through the Roman lines. The contents of these letters have been lost to history, but they were not pleas. They were proposals. They were the slow, methodical laying of groundwork for a final negotiation. Because what nobody understood, what Octavian himself was only beginning to suspect, was that the queen had one asset left that he could not seize by force: the narrative of her own death. And that's before we get to the part they never put in the history books. The true moment of betrayal didn't come from a Roman soldier or an ambitious general. It came from within her own house, in that suffocatingly tense meeting with Octavian. Think about the person you trust to manage the most intimate details of your life. Now imagine them standing up in front of your greatest enemy and exposing your last secret. When her treasurer, Seleucus, spoke up, accusing her of hiding treasure, he wasn't just revealing a financial fact. He was severing the final thread that connected her to the Egypt she once ruled. He was announcing to the new master of the world that the old allegiances were dead. Her violent reaction, the pulling of hair, the blows to his face, was real fury. But it was the fury of a queen realizing she was no longer a queen, that she was just a woman in a room full of men who now owned her. It was the profound humiliation of being unmasked not by her enemy, but by her servant. This was the moment she understood with absolute clarity that she was utterly and completely alone. The world she had commanded for 2 decades had evaporated, and the people who had bowed to her now saw only a stepping stone to curry favor with the new regime. The gold and jewels she had hidden were meaningless. The real treasure she had lost in that instant was loyalty. And in that silence after her rage, a cold, hard decision crystallized in her mind. But the most shocking part of this betrayal wasn't the treasurer's words. The story of the fig basket is a beautiful piece of theater, but it falls apart under the slightest scrutiny. This is the moment where you must stop seeing this as a tragedy and start seeing it as a transaction. The palace was an armed camp. Cleopatra was the most high-value prisoner in the world. You are asked to believe that a simple farmer was able to stroll past multiple layers of elite Roman guards, carrying a basket large enough to conceal a 3-foot-long Egyptian cobra without a single person inspecting its contents. This wasn't a lapse in security. It was a deliberate turning of a blind eye. The Roman historian Cassius Dio, writing centuries later but using earlier sources, even suggests that Octavian himself might have been complicit, that he secretly admired her desire to avoid the humiliation of a triumph and allowed the means of her death to reach her. Here's what should make you deeply uncomfortable. This was a coordinated act. We know her own physician, a man named Olympos, was reportedly with her until the very end and wrote an account of her death, which is now conveniently lost. Why was a physician, a man sworn to preserve life, present at a suicide? The answer is that he wasn't there to stop it. He was there to manage it. This wasn't chaos. This was a carefully orchestrated exit, sanctioned from the highest level. The conflicting ancient reports, some say an asp, others a poisoned pin hidden in her hair, others a toxic ointment, are not signs of historical confusion. They are the predictable result of an official cover-up, a cloud of misinformation designed to obscure a simple, chilling fact. Cleopatra did not die in defiance of Octavian. She died with his permission. And all of this was codified in one final document. There is one more piece to this puzzle. The final letter she sent to Octavian just before the end. You haven't been told what it really said. That final letter, delivered to Octavian just hours before her death, was not a suicide note. It was the signed copy of a contract. You must understand that this was never about a queen choosing death over dishonor. That is the story Rome wanted you to hear. This was about a CEO negotiating the terms of a hostile takeover. What you now understand, and what most people never will, is that this wasn't about Cleopatra's personal fate at all. It was about the future of the Ptolemaic dynasty and the orderly transfer of an entire nation's wealth. Cleopatra knew her own life was forfeit. She knew Egypt was lost. But she still had 3 things Octavian desperately wanted: a quick and rebellion-free annexation of Egypt, the location of the rest of the vast Ptolemaic treasury, and the elimination of the single greatest threat to his legitimacy, her eldest son, Caesarion. As the biological son of Julius Caesar, Caesarion had a stronger claim to Caesar's legacy than Octavian, who was merely an adopted heir. So she made him an offer. In her final letters, she laid out the terms of a pact. She would give him everything. She would ensure a peaceful transition of power, reveal the hidden wealth, and she would solve his Caesarian problem by leaving the boy in a vulnerable position where Octavian's men could easily find and execute him. In exchange, he would grant her 3 concessions. First, a death of her own choosing, a dignified pharaonic exit that would preserve her divine mystique, not the public degradation of a Roman triumph. Second, to be buried beside Mark Antony, uniting them in death as they were in life. And third, and most importantly, he would spare the lives of her other 3 children with Antony: Alexander Helios, Cleopatra Selene, and Ptolemy Philadelphus. Octavian accepted the deal. It was perfect for him. He acquired the wealth of Egypt without a bloody insurgency. He eliminated his only dynastic rival, and he avoided the political nightmare of executing a world-famous queen and the mother of Caesar's child. He got to appear merciful by allowing her suicide while being ruthlessly efficient. This wasn't a tragedy. It was the most cold-blooded business transaction in ancient history. The serpent's kiss was not an act of passion. It was a closing signature. This pattern of powerful empires absorbing their rivals not through simple conquest, but through meticulously managed political theater that recasts brutal pragmatism as unavoidable tragedy, is not ancient history. It is the operating manual for power. The answer to the question you've been sitting with this entire video is this: Octavian didn't let Cleopatra die. He needed her to die. Her death was the final critical component of his victory. A live Cleopatra, paraded through Rome, would have been a constant living reminder of the civil war and a potential symbol for future rebellions. She would have been a human problem. But a dead Cleopatra, one who died a mystical, exotic death by her own hand, she became a legend, a myth. She was no longer a political threat, but a romantic tragedy, a story he could control. He didn't just conquer her kingdom, he conquered her narrative, turning his most formidable enemy into a cautionary tale. The serpent in the basket wasn't her assassin. It was her co-conspirator. It was the prop that allowed both of them to get exactly what they wanted. And the deeper answer, the one that touches on the question of your own life? The ultimate act of control is not to escape your fate, but to choose the manner in which you meet it. Cleopatra couldn't save her kingdom or her life, but she could, and did, trade them both for the one thing a pharaoh valued above all else: a legacy written on her own terms and the survival of her bloodline. It was the coldest, hardest, and most successful deal she ever made. We return to that hot, silent room in the mausoleum, to the scent of figs and myrrh. The woman dresses herself in gold, not for a parade, but for a meeting with her ancestors. The pact is sealed. That pattern of power being transferred not on the battlefield, but in quiet, unrecorded conversations where human lives are traded like assets, has never gone away. You see it today in corporate boardrooms where thousands of jobs are eliminated with a handshake, and in geopolitical summits where the fates of nations are decided behind closed doors. The public is fed a story of necessity, of tragedy, of inevitability. The truth is always in the deal that you are never meant to see. The next time you watch a powerful leader fall, and the official story feels just a little too perfect, remember the queen and her basket of figs. Remember what you just heard. Tell me in the comments, which part of this story will stay with you?